Hello, I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. On today's episode of What's on My Workbench, I've got a package here we're going to open up. It's a project, it's not another tool. But I'm going to explain a little bit here. I had a person reach out to me, had seen a couple of my videos on correcting an issue with a belt, either repairing it or lengthening it, and reached out because they had bought a gift for someone and they were having some issues with it and wanted to see if I could come up with a solution to it. So we'll get over here on the workbench and open it up and take a look at it here. It'll be my first hands-on look at it. I've seen some pictures of it, but sometimes you really don't know what you've got until you get it in your hands. So I appreciate you taking time to be with the shop. We'll get over here on the workbench and get started on this. All right, let's take a quick gander at this. I have a note here from them concerning some measurements and concerns and address and such. So let's get this out of the way here and we'll take a look. Okay, so this is the end of the original belt here. And this pattern, it looks like it's about, I don't know, 10 inches long from here to here, and then that's where it repeats. So I don't know if he uses a stamp on that or if it's a roller that goes through there. There's a pretty good break right here where this pattern repeats. And I'm looking at it here on this other end to see if there's any variation in it. I suspect that it's a roller that he pulls it through, or an embosser. So anyway, the challenge is to add on to this end of the belt. This is a 38-inch belt to here. And what I need to do is I need to make this into a 44-inch belt. So that's adding a considerable amount to the end of this. Of course, I'm adding that, splitting it on the two sides so that the name here in the center stays centered in the back. So with that in mind, 38 inches to here to go to 44, that's 6 inches. So I need to add 3 inches on this end. So if I add, let me just measure it here. On here, 44, half of 44 is 22. So if I come back here, line up 22 on the center of the belt, this will show you where 44 inches is. So 44 inches is going to be here. And the person that gave it to me to ask me to help to fix it, they said a 43 or a 44. So I'm going with the 44. A 44 would be right here. And then I will add a couple of adjustment holes past that. And these holes that are previous to that, I'm just going to leave those alone. I considered trying to fill them, but I think that's just asking for something to come apart later and not look good, and most people aren't going to notice it. There's so much going on in this pattern with this design that most people probably don't even see the holes to begin with. So anyway, so the task was to try to figure out how to add to this. And I played with the idea of adding the belt keeper's initials to the end here. And this was a first attempt. I need to adjust the style of the leathers a little bit to get them closer to what was on the back. But these would represent initials on the end here. And I'm going to end up cutting it off here where this English point starts. So it would be something kind of like that. So if I did put it on there, and if this was the length that I had, I would have my 44 here. If I added 2 or even 3, I would be to here. And I usually like to have 6.5 inches from the adjustment hole that it's designed for to the end. So if I did 6.5 to the 44, that'd be 50.5. So I'll just push this over. That would put this like right about there on here. So I would probably squeeze this up because I want to keep the, I don't like to have patterns, and I understand there's lots of belts that have patterns where the holes are, but I wouldn't want it to impede with where the initials were. But so I looked at the initials and I made the sample and I sent that to the client, and they said no. They had something they liked better. I did toy with the idea of just using some type of a geometric pattern. These obviously aren't dyed yet. And then I went ahead and I started futzing with just continuing that pattern. Now this isn't all the way filled in. This is just kind of a loose outline, and testing to see if I could create this same, this kind of same look here with my tools. And I struggled a little bit using my regular tools to try to get this definition in here of, I don't even know what it is, trees, grass, mountain ridge, you know, whatever that is. I guess I'll call them trees. So anyway, I struggle a little bit using our typical tools to do that. I was able to create this kind of outline, but I ended up going into my toolbox and grabbing this, or these, center punches. This one's pretty abused. And I was able to really sharpen up or define these areas here with that larger center punch. And then this smaller one here, let me grab my smaller mallet, but I'm able to create that pattern, and I may need to take away a little bit of the sharpness of this, and it's going to take a little bit of futzing with it, but I can create a pattern between the two of these that I think I can emulate that look. So the next thing I decided to do was, how do I transfer that pattern to there? And I don't need to, you know, get every dot. What I needed was an outline. So I took some tracing paper, figured out where this pattern repeat was going to, you know, start over in here, and I laid this on there and copied the outline and kind of placement of trees. Then I will go ahead and wet this here in a moment, get a little bit of a case in this, and this is what I will then, I'll use with my pencil and go ahead and trace in some of this. Then when I get ready to tool it, I'll have my pattern here, and I can define these trees. And I think, I mean, this obviously is shy of having enough design in it, but I think I can create something that won't, you know, draw your attention to the fact that it was added on. So that's the task anyway. That's where I'm at. And I've got the back. I shaved off probably less than an ounce just to get rid of the sealer that was on the back of it. Get it a uniform thickness. I pulled a piece of, this is actually some Herman oak, through the splitter once I had this thickness. So these two will be the same thickness. And I'm going to do a step skive on here, and I have to decide which direction I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to skive this direction to where this overlays this pattern here. The reason why is I think people have a tendency when you're feeding the belt into your loops to be a little bit slower there, but sometimes people pull it out quickly. So I don't want that flap when it's going this direction to potentially catch on something. Now, I am not going to sew, I think I said this earlier, but I'm not going to sew this in. If this pattern wasn't so close to the edge, I would go through here and I'd sew this through. But I'm just going to use contact adhesive. But in this one area here where I've got this step skive, and I'm going to do probably 3/4 of an inch of a step skive there. And then I'm going to line this. I've got some leather already picked out. It's about 3.5 ounces. I'm going to line the complete belt once I get this put together. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create just a small box of stitching here. I'll try to hide it in this pattern some. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll actually follow the design on, you know, like one side of this. But I want to get this stitched in before I laminate these together. I think that will, and as I said, you know, I think I'll actually create that stitching through that and the liner so it all ties together. On this other end, all I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same step skive over here, and I'm going to add plain leather. And the reason why I'm just going to add plain leather is the bend over for the belt buckle is going to be like right about here. These holes here, I've got an idea to fill this one in, But these holes here, I don't think are really going to come into play, because when you're wearing the belt, then you're going to have the tip is going to be here. So I think it's a solution to this to, save the belt that the person bought that wasn't the right size. And I don't know where the breakdown was on it. The person, I think, wears 38 jeans, and the belt's marked 38. So I'm assuming that there was a confusion on that, and that's the easiest thing to confuse. I mean, I can remember when I first moved out, started buying my own clothes. I wore 32s then. 32s, I went and bought a 32 belt. You already know that doesn't work. You have to be at least 2 inches, if not more than that. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm not going to take you through all of it, but I'll show you a couple glimpses of my tooling here as I work to define this on there. I do appreciate you taking time. Let's get started on this, and I'll bring you back in here in a little bit. All right, so I'm making a little bit of progress here. Obviously, trying to mimic this exactly. There are artists out there that could do that, but the client just wanted to have something added onto the end so that the belt was usable here. And so I'm just kind of working in. I started first with the trees here and the mountain outline, tried to somewhat mimic that. This belt is actually going to come, English point's going to be about here on here, so I don't need to get out past here. But now that I have some of these main features kind of roughed in, then I'm just going to come in here, like here at the base of these 2 trees, and I'm just going to futz in some details here. And I am using a unorthodox tool like I talked about earlier. And I think really all I need to do is to kind of keep futzing with it so that it's as busy as this looks here. And I've got 2 different size of these center punches. This one's a little bit wider than the other one. When I finish, I'll put a resist on here, and I'll use some black antiquing to mimic that same look there. And I need to remember this is actually a little bit wider than that one. I'll be trimming off the bottom here, so I don't want to get my pattern too close to the bottom. So what do they say? This is not a how to do it. This is how I'm doing it video. And there's probably people out there saying, I wouldn't have bothered to take on this project. And I don't have a problem with that. If you wouldn't do it, that's fine. I'm just kind of showing a way here to maybe you've got a belt that was grandpa's that it would be nice to, maybe someone remembers them always wearing that belt, and maybe you're able to adjust the size to make it usable today. Also found this little tool in the toolbox, and I've used this some as well to create some of these vertical patterns here, because there's some areas in here where it's really flat on the bottom and other areas where it isn't so flat. So I'm just kind of using a combination of tools. I'm just going to keep filling in here until I get something in here that somewhat resembles the pattern on the original section of belt here. So I'm just going to keep futzing away here, and hopefully this isn't too boring. I'll try to edit this down to keep it somewhat short. I've decided to go ahead and do my assembly, and I'm going to go ahead and keep working on this piece down here. But I was starting to get a little bit of stretch in it that I didn't want, and I thought if I got my liner on there that might help stabilize that some. So I'm going to go ahead and work on that. This is my tip end that I'll be adding, and then this is my extension here. So what I'm going to do first, I'll focus on these front pieces. I'll get that all completed. I worked on a step skive here. I skived off the back on both ends of this. And my thoughts on this end, I think I've already said it, but my thoughts on this end is that when you're putting it through the loops, then you're hand feeding it through. But sometimes when people take a belt off, they just grab a hold of the buckle end and pull. So I felt like going this direction, that this edge here would be less likely to have a problem. So that's what we're going to do there. So I'm going to start off by getting contact adhesive on all of my parts here. And I'm going to focus on the areas that get attached to this first. And I'm going to apply 2 coats like I normally do. I'm going to make sure I get it really sealed well here on this first coat, and the second coat will help build up a little bit. Keep off of the face. And because I think I've mentioned before, other than this joint here, I'm not going to be doing any sewing on this belt. And I'm trying to get it on the sides of this vertical bag punch cut. And I will do the same on the belt. All right, let's see if we can get this put together. little gentle persuasion. I wasn't too worried about getting contact adhesive on this finished front because it doesn't really want to stick to sealed leather. Front side. If you remember, this is a little bit fat on the bottom. I'll be trimming that off. I'm more interested in getting this pattern up here lined up. So I got 7, 7.5, 11 in the middle, 11 here, 11 there. You know what? You know, I could use the skiver on this some. I'm going to do that just a little bit here, but I'm not going to get carried away because a little extra meat here in the connection would be fine by me. I'm just kind of holding this flatter than normal to kind of use it to scrape some off here. I'm going to let this dry here where I just put more contact adhesive on there. I'll do that and I'll line this up the same way. And then I'm going to go ahead and apply contact adhesive to the backs of all of these pieces, including the liner. And we'll come back when we're ready to put the liner on there. I mean, this is really just pretty straightforward. So I'll be right back. So we are tacky. Got 2 good coats of contact adhesive on here. We're ready to line this belt. And this is going to be the bend area right here. It's got a step skive down a little bit thinner for this last part of it. And I'm going to start 3.5 inches is where the belt starts. So go ahead and get this on here. And I'll put a little bit of a bend here where it's going to be on the buckle. And then we'll line this. And I did cut this belt strap slightly oversized, so we'll need to trim that to fit. This lining material I'm using here is the Vaqueta leather from Montana Leather. And I had someone ask me the other day about lining their belts and where to buy the lining material. And any of the leather, a lot of times on my belts, I'll use the same thickness front and back, so my liner's the same. And but if you're buying a pre-cut belt strap, if it's like 8 or 9 ounces, you can get a 3 ounce or a 2 ounce lining material to go on there. And the reason why I bring that up at this point is this material here is like 3 to 3.5 ounces. So it might be something to, work for you. And it comes in 6 colors and it's already dyed. So that did cut down on some time here. All I had to do was decide which color I wanted to line it with. Go ahead and pull this out and cut it, and I'm ready to go. I don't have to wait for anything to dry. Got a little bit of glue that came through that adjustment hole there. I'm going to take my time, and a lot of times I'll burnish them in, but I'm stitching them. I'm not going to be doing any stitching on this belt other than maybe around here where my additions are. So I'm going to take my time, tap down both of these edges really well all the way around, and then I'll come back. We'll be ready at that time to start doing our forming on our ends. Now that I've got my pattern here, I can continue to fill in a little bit on my pattern. And I'm going to be using black antiquing in here. That'll help to highlight that area there. So I'll come back here in just a little bit. And I'm going to continue working on this. And I'll do all my measuring so I know exactly where the end is here, so I'm not doing any extra work there. So I'll be right back. Now as I apply this antiquing, that will help to highlight the design. We'll let that sit for a couple minutes here. We'll let this dry. This design is really easy to drag the antiquing out of, so I'm going to let this dry for probably close to 24 hours before I put the clear coat on the top. All right, so here's where we're at now. I've cut it to length. I've done some sanding on it, finished my edges, the first step of me finishing the edges. And now I'm going to dye the edges black. It was black on this other part of the belt. And I get it. When you look at that, you're like, it's not the same. The point is to try to make the belt usable. It wasn't usable before because it was way undersized. There was no way to even get it to fasten. So, and it's got a person's name on it. I guess you could find someone else with the same name and pass it on. But I think, in my opinion, this will work. The adjustment hole they're going to be using is going to be here. So really, this is going to be where the buckle's at, and you're going to have a keeper and all of that there. I think it's a workable solution for a belt that you know, couldn't be used. So I'm going to go ahead and get my edges black on this belt. I don't do that typically on my belts, but that's what this belt had on it. So I think that's going to work pretty good. And I'm going to reach out to the owner and look about improving the buckle. The buckle that was on there was a center bar buckle, and I'm just not a fan of center bar buckles. Pretty lightweight, and with a center bar you don't need a keeper. And I'm assuming that that's the reason why this belt didn't have a regular buckle on it, was so they wouldn't have to worry about making keepers. I'm just making an assumption there. Maybe I should keep that to myself, but I'm not a fan of a center bar buckle for a belt. So especially one, it's kind of on the smaller size. So I'm going to continue going here. I'll get this edge done. When that's done, then I'll probably go one more time over the edge and burnish it. I find sometimes that the fibers of the belt rise up a little bit when I put this Pro Dye on here. I'm not using edge coat, I'm using Pro Dye to dye the edge black. I'll give it one more go around with that, and then I'm going to put Resin on the complete belt. And we'll come back here and do a little bit of a wrap up and talk about this project. All right, here we are. Yeah, obviously, it doesn't look exactly like the other part of it there, but the belt wasn't usable the way it was. It's got the person's name on the belt, so that's going to limit, you know, someone else using it. And it is usable now, so I guess I'll send photos off and hope that the person's happy. I did send a proof of kind of what the tooling would look like here before we got into the belt any further. So, you know, if they didn't like that, I could have sent it back to them just the way it was. But we've moved along here now. I'm just about finished. I'm putting black pro dye on the edges here. I don't usually do black on my edges. I think it's looking pretty nice on here though, but that's what was on their belt when I received it. So I'm just making the edges look the same. I think that the layer that I added, I've got it sanded in here and finished in nicely. I think it looks good. I do justice to the belt that was here before. It wasn't what I would call a crazy expensive belt. I don't know what the person paid for it, never asked. And I'm not going to charge a whole lot to do this work. I just thought it'd be kind of an interesting project. Plus, they asked for help, and I like to try to help if I can. So I'll finish this edge on here. I'll do a little bit more burnish on it. I'll put a coat of Resin on the whole thing. The belt that came was really shiny, so it's going to keep it looking basically the same. Get it all sealed up. I'll know when we come back what kind of buckle we're going to put on there, and we'll come back and wrap up where we're at on this. So I've talked to my client, and they agreed with me that that buckle, I think, is more suited for a men's belt. I'm probably way off base. I'm not a fan of a center bar buckle. I get it. It also keeps you to where you don't have to make a keeper for it. I guess you could put a keeper behind it, but I'm just not a big fan of them. And I think this works better. The other thing to keep into consideration is that repair. You'd be bending into a tight arch every time to put it through this back part of it. So I think this works better for that repaired belt. So let's go ahead and assemble this. I've put my last sealer on the belt, and it's not quite all the way cured. It's dry to touch, but I'm going to wait probably a day before I put this in the mail. It's headed to Florida, actually. The other thing, it does break up the repair on the buckle end, but I don't think that that's really that big of a deal, partially because you're not going to see that, obviously, regardless of what buckle you have installed on here, because the tip of the belt would hide that. And the original belt had one snap on it. I'm not a fan of snaps either. I like the Chicago screws. I've used some snaps, but not too many times on my belts. I know. Should I put my maker's mark on there? I mean, really, I took the materials that were here and made a new belt. All right, here it is on this end. The keeper also hides that transition. And I get it. It's not an exact match. But the point was to try to make it, to make it usable. And we had to add a considerable amount to this belt. It was a 38 and we went to a 44 inch. And I did it in such a way that the name is still centered in the back of the belt. There it is on the size that the customer wanted. I think it's a workable solution. Let's turn the camera around here for a minute. Well, there you go. I think it's a workable solution to a belt that was bought as a gift. I think it's her son, and I don't know if they were on a trip together, but she said it came from, I think she said Pigeon Forge. And it's got the name here in it. It obviously wasn't the right size. It was off considerably. I think it's a workable belt, and I I guess it's better than having a belt hanging in the closet that doesn't work. The color match I thought worked out really nicely. This is mahogany and dark brown mixed together. And it's actually a mix that I use on a lot of my belts. I do just 50-50 and the color is really close. I suppose this has got a little bit of a yellower tone to the deep down color on it, but I think it'll work. Tell me, should I put my name in here on this piece of work? And there's that repair. You're not going to really see it anyway, but there's the bag punch right there. So I think it worked pretty good. I just left that round hole alone. I don't think it needed to be addressed. But I knew that bag punch area was going to come into play with that screw. So I think it's a good solution. Well, there you go. Completed project, go back in the mail tomorrow, headed back to Florida. Appreciate you taking time to watch today. Go ahead, put me a comment in there. I know there's going to be some people probably pretty brutal on the comments. What do you think I should charge to do this repair? Please like, share, and subscribe, but more importantly, I hope you have a great day.